Environment, Overall and Scrutiny Committee, the first meeting of thereabouts. And today we're going to look at the draft waste enforcement policy. And it says, welcome apologies. May I welcome more members and officers to the hybrid meeting of the Economy, Environment and Overall Scrutiny Committee. I'll get used to saying that, it's quite a mouthful. This meeting is able to be viewed live by members of the press and public today. Therefore, I welcome anyone who be watching remotely. A recording of this meeting will be made available on the Council's webcasting and YouTube channels after the meeting is concluded, should anyone wish to view it. To confirm, as a Council, we welcome the use of the Welsh language within our public meetings, but I can confirm that we have not received any notifications or requests to use Welsh today. Therefore, the meeting will be conducted in English only. May I remind members to refrain from using the chat facility and instead use the raised hand icon to indicate when you would like to speak. Could you also keep your microphone muted when not talking so there aren't any interruptions encountered? May I also remind members, as per statutory guidance under Section 4 of the Local Government Wales Measure 2011 and our formally adopted hybrid meeting policy, that any member attending the meeting remotely must be able to be seen and heard by members and officers who are attending the meeting, as well as by members of the public viewing the meeting. So could I ask you all to use your cameras for the duration of the meeting? Moving on to the agenda, could now our Democratic Services Officer confirm whether we received any apologies?
Yes, Chair. Good morning. We have received apologies from Councillor Elizabeth Haynes.
That's the only one as far as I understand.
That's correct, yes.
Yeah, thank you very much. Thank you very much indeed. Right, next thing is declarations of interest. Could I ask you to go through the members of this committee, please, now, and ask them whether they've got anything to declare? And I believe I'm first, as I always am, being an A, and I do not have anything to declare.
Okay, that's fine. Can I ask Councillor Clarkson?
Nothing.
Okay. Councillor Haller?
Not as I'm aware.
Councillor Gordon?
Nothing from me.
Councillor Parish?
Nothing to declare.
Councillor Watkins?
No, nothing to declare.
Councillor Williams?
Nothing to declare.
And finally, Councillor Yole.
Yeah, nothing from me, thank you.
Yeah, that's everyone in the meeting, Chair.
Thank you very much. We go on to the next item on the agenda, which is the minutes of the meeting held on the 7th of March, which seems an awful long time ago. David Williams was in the chair. Just to remind members, these minutes, it says the minutes of the previous meeting, but and was received on the Enforcement Service Review. Could you state whether you have anything to say in relation to this minutes? If not, I'll take them as agreed. You put your hands up if you like, just to show that you agree to it. But it doesn't matter if I don't hear anything and nobody's against. I assume that everybody's in agreement. That's unanimous. Thank you very much.
Okay, sorry,
Jane?
can I please abstain because I wasn't at the meeting?
Jane, we take that as read. You weren't here, and neither was Carl, and neither was Nathan. So we understand that. Thank you, Jane. That's very precise. Councillor Watkins, sorry. All right. So item number 4 is action sheet. Could members please confirm that? I think, Karen, you got something on that. It was brought up in another place.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Councillor Clarkson's going to come in, if that's okay.
Yes.
Thank you, Chair. It's in regard to the response, the third item on the action sheet, ward by ward data regarding number of PCNs and FBNs. Just could that be amended to show that that information wasn't available to us?
For the sake of some members that might not know what those are, Linda, could you explain briefly what they are, please?
Fixed penalty notices.
Yeah, the acronyms sometimes on this committee are a little bit much for people. I just so I don't know whether they probably do know what they are, but it's useful just to every time we got acronyms to just describe them. Thanks, Linda. So where are we going with those, Geraint?
We'll amend the action sheet and it'll be referenced in the minutes, Chair.
Thank you very much indeed. That's everything on that. Agenda item 5 is draft waste enforcement policy, which is what we're here for today. And it's the purpose of the report is to seek committee's view on the draft enforcement policy prior to taking the policy to cabinet for approval. And I have to welcome Councillor Sue Morgan, Executive Member for Waste and Sustainability. Mark Thomas, Deputy Director, Highways and Climate Change. I believe you're also acting Director of the department as well. And Claire Cutforth, isn't it? Head of Waste Transformation to the meeting. Which of you wants to go first on talking about this? Have you decided on this? It's a brief introduction, I believe,
Thank you, Chair. If it's all right.
Yeah, Sue, I was thinking you would both have a few minutes on this.
Not really a few minutes, but just to thank committee for inviting us to scrutinise this report. Your input's going to be very valuable. The importance of Torvine's absolute commitment to raising the recycling rate, both to previous target level of 64%, which we have unconfirmed figures at this point to suggest that we've achieved, but now we're aiming for a target of 70%, which Welsh Government has set. So this is one small piece of the jigsaw, but a very useful piece of the jigsaw. We welcome your input in getting this right. The emphasis of the policy sitting within the larger enforcement policy of the Council will very much be education, education, education and enforcement as an absolute last resort. But nonetheless, in fairness to those who very conscientiously do their part in recycling, that last resort is a useful one to have and a fair one to have within the overall system, in my view. So I'm going to hand over to Claire and possibly to Mark to take us through the report. And again, thank you in anticipation of your input. It would be very welcome.
Good morning. As Councillor Morgan mentioned, there's a need for change if Torvine is to achieve the increasing recycling performance target, which is now 70%. And if we fail to meet that target, there will be financial penalties. So it's really important that we do take steps to improve the recycling performance. A strategic improvement plan to increase recycling was approved by Cabinet in January this year, and the plan included proposals to increase the recycling rate, and as part of that, the review of enforcement was included. Indeed, engagement first and fair enforcement are key principles of the current waste and recycling strategy for Torvine. So the scrutiny report presented to you today sets out the key principles of the draft waste education and enforcement policy. And the key points I just wanted to draw your attention to are that public consultation has taken place via the Raise the Rate survey, and that showed a reasonable amount of support for enforcement action. As Councillor Morgan said, the vast majority are doing this correctly, and the focus is on education first, but ultimately where that fails, we're looking to have powers to take the next steps. And the policy adopts the same general principles as the Public Protection Service Enforcement Compliance Policy, and that again prioritises behaviour change over enforcement. The policy proposes that initially we tackle excess side waste prior to tackling those who are not recycling, and even when we move to tackling those who are not recycling, enforcement officers will follow the Keeping Up with Joneses approach, which is a 4-step process, which again enables that education, education, education prior to taking any enforcement action. So prior to this proposal and policy going to Cabinet, I welcome your questions and comments. Thank you.
Did you want to add anything, Mark?
No, thank you, Chair. Other than to say, it's very much welcome the committee's assessment and happy to engage.
Well, this is enabling me not to say the key messages because between you and Sue, Claire, you've actually said it. So I'll go straight into the questions. Members have all got a copy of the questions. There's 24, and they're quite long. So without much ado, I'm going to sort of go straight into them, I think. And Gareth's put me number 1 on this, so I get my question out the way. Which I'm amused by, to be quite honest, because as chair, I only get a couple of questions. The members of the committee get more questions. And to be fair, members came up with a good bag of questions. So I think you'll find that we're very, it was a lively preamble round this, as you can well imagine. My question relates to 3.1 and 7.1 in the report, and it says, I did say, Welsh Government recycling target of 70% for 24-25. However, the potential enforcement is not due to commence until March 25. Is this a concern in light of potential fines for Welsh Government? Did you get that, you guys?
Yes.
I'm sure you did. Who wants to answer that one?
I'm happy to come in. So in terms of achieving the 70% target, there are a number of measures we're taking as part of the Raise the Rate campaign and the Strategic Improvement Programme. So enforcement is just one element of that. Obviously, to achieve the 70% in year is going to be challenging, but we were coming from a position of 58% performance the preceding year, and we're now indicating a much more positive performance in the last year, which shows that we are moving in the right direction from measures that have already taken place, but we will need that change in enforcement in order to drive us towards that 70%.
Do you want to add anything, Mark?
Yes, thank you, Chair. I understand, obviously, and as Claire has suggested previously, the main issue that we have here is our engagement. We're working well with Welsh Government in terms of demonstrating a positive trajectory towards that 70% target. But our main ambition at the moment, whilst it's the enforcement and engagement campaign, what we're really pushing forward over the intervening period is to engage with our communities, to encourage and remind them of the need to recycle, and the fact that the target for any sort of enforcement activities would be sort of within the new financial year. That's not really of concern to me. It's what's of concern to me at the moment is that drive and ambition is to engage and encourage our communities to raise the rate and increase the recycling targets. But so just to recap, yes, the threat of fines are always there, but I've been encouraged in terms of the attitude of Welsh Government and say our positive engagement with them.
Thank you.
I think as long as they can see positive progression to it, we're hopeful that those fines won't be forthcoming, but there's no guarantee at this current time. That matter really rests with Welsh Government.
Thank you there. Any questions in the chamber?
Not a question, Chair. I just wanted to alert you to something. Once you've spoken, can you mute yourself as well, please, Chair? Because we're getting feedback whenever anybody in the chamber speaks. We're getting feedback from the screen or from the speakers in here, and we think it's to do with your system. Tap.
Was that better when I did that?
I think so, but we'll only tell going forward.
It's difficult to chair a meeting without leaving the mic open as chair, but okay, I have to do it. Right, I just said, is there anybody in the chamber who wants to raise any questions on it? I thought this was a start of that. Okay, next question, number 2, Councillor Clarkson.
Thank you, Chair. Just an observation on the background information, and possibly you can give us some more information about it. During the 2022-23 and in 2023-24, there seemed to be a reduction in recycling in quarter 3 and 4. which green waste would usually be included in that. We'd anticipated that would rise during those quarters. Is there any sort of insight into why that's taking place and whether that's something that could be looked at specifically?
Quarter 3 and 4, you're right, it's where the garden waste isn't coming through. So quarter 3, so quarter 1 is April, May, June. Quarter 2 is July, August, September, which would be our heaviest for garden waste. And then quarters 3 and 4 are the winter months. So you would expect there to be a tail off in those months.
Thank you.
Next, Councillor Nick Horler.
Morning, everybody. This is a follow-on from Councillor Clarkson's question. In the light of climate change, do you expect to see any inconsistencies going forward regarding the amount of green waste, and is there a plan to address this? And the reason I say that is that the last couple of months we have had a lot of wet weather, so the amount of grass that's being collected is being reduced because nobody is cutting it. And where are we moving forward? Is there any plans a way forward with that?
That's obviously not something we've considered as part of the enforcement policy, but it is something that we've considered in part of the wider waste strategy, and the waste strategy is currently under review because we're doing a new recycling and waste strategy from next year. So that's certainly something that we can take into account as part of that strategy. And it's not just green waste that's changing, it's other waste streams because of the design of packaging as well. So that's very much something that we are taking into account when we're projecting our future needs in terms of processing requirements as well. So, for example, you've got a number of legislative changes as well, extended producer responsibility in the deposit return scheme. That's going to change the nature of what we collect. So that's certainly something that we are very conscious of within waste management and that we continuously track in terms of performance. I think ultimately, alongside that, we're working closely with Welsh Government on various engagement groups, because we have to be aware that as the waste composition changes, there may be a need to review the nature of the recycling targets. So that's something that we can't necessarily control, but that we can feed into as a local authority.
Thank you.
Anybody got any supplementary questions on this? Because it was something that came up pre.
No, I think that was a really valid answer. Thank you very much. It highlights the fact that we are going to go through changes, and packaging is going to change, recycling is going to change, and how we keep on top of that is beneficial. Thank you.
Councillor Horler, you got number 4 as well. You got him blocked together on these questions.
So, this is regarding 3.5, and it's regarding behaviour change. How much consideration is being given to supporting residents and challenging for recycling? For example, in the borough, there are many terrace houses that have space and access limitations. This impacts on storage of receptacles, which they need to bring through their homes for collection. Can you bring me up to date on that, please?
Thank you, Councillor Horler. Before I ask Claire to respond, I just want to say that this is something I'm particularly concerned about, that the ask that we make of our residents around recycling takes account of those who have greater challenges in achieving that contribution that they need to make, and that those who are disadvantaged through perhaps not having a vehicle or on-street accommodation that opens straight onto pavements, that their needs are taken into consideration. So those sorts of questions around how can we support and help in terms of the receptacles that are used are always uppermost in our minds, and I'm quite confident that we are doing everything we can at this stage, but that there is more that we can look into doing, perhaps at a Wales level, but perhaps at a national level, to support those particularly who don't have vehicles. So yeah, thank you for the question, and I'll pass to Claire to be more specific.
Thank you. So obviously we're keen to support residents and make it as easy to recycle as possible. And as part of that, we do research best practice. We're on a number of regional groups, looking at what other local authorities are doing as well. And as part of the service improvement programme, we have the service quality and recycling offer work streams, as part of which we have undertaken a container review and taken into account that feedback and looked at what is being used for various materials. And that does take into account not just what works in terms of the Welsh Government blueprint in terms of segregating the recycling, but also what works in other local authorities that face similar challenges to ourselves in terms of terrace properties. So that is definitely considered when we're designing the service.
Nick, did you want to add anything on that?
No, I'm okay on that.
Well, I said I want to make a supplementary on that, if I may. As a member of the planning committee, one of the things I feel that we don't get enough of, and I wonder whether you'd looked into, is the requirement for modern houses to have space for storing recycling, because I think it's something it's lacking from the design of most houses. It's also for bicycles and mobility scooters, but recycling does seem to be something that's sadly lacking. You can go to well-known stores and buy recycling shelters, but our terrace houses are one issue. The other is the modern housing does not seem to cater the storage space for what we're asking them to store. I think I understand where Sue's coming from, because we have developments in our particular ward, and people have been asked to store all these receptacles in areas where they probably haven't got storage, and it probably interferes with the design of their back gardens. You know, maybe we need to have a conversation now about building recycling into the design of modern houses, and certainly where it concerns flats, which I know is a particular problem you've got. Would you like to respond to that, please, Claire?
I think Mark wants to come in, Chair.
Oh, Mark may be more appropriate, but thank you.
No, thank you. It's a good point that you make, and I understand there are two issues here that we're looking at. One is obviously, as Councillor Hall has suggested, in terms of existing terrace properties and how we ensure that we don't compromise the residents' abilities to store and present their recycling. But going on to your point about design, obviously, it might be a subject for a further scrutiny committee, but officers with highways and planning are looking to develop a street design guide, and that's precisely exactly to cover the issues that you're mentioning in terms of the additional and new requirements upon our streets and our new estates, in terms of active travel, in terms of where we recycle, in terms of being more pedestrian dominant as opposed to vehicle dominant. All that is coming through in terms of a design guide and a policy. So that's something quite happy to bring through and allow scrutiny to examine and comment on in the future.
We'll capture that point. Thank you, Mark. Thank you very much indeed. Right, next is Councillor Parish. You've got question number 5 and number 6. I'll get both of those in, so you don't have to refer back to me on that, Norma.
Okay, thank you, Chair. This question is 3.5 in the report, 3.5 then 3B. Is there a time frame around when the new recycling transfer station will be in place?
Mark, perhaps you could come in on this one?
Yes, thanks, Chair. Yeah, the timescale that we've got at the moment, Councillor Parish, is that the existing waste transfer station in Teacock, the rent lease expires March 27. So we're working hard at the moment, Councillor, to determine what the future holds. We've examined a number of sites and we're doing the feasibility on those sites at the moment. And then obviously as we move forward, we'll have a preferred site and bring that forward then for approval.
Right, thank you. I knew you wouldn't be able to be, really specific on that, but thank you for that. Right, Chair, shall I go on to 6? And that's 3.6 in the report and 2B. And it's what impact in terms of the overall percentages around recycling in Torfaen has the introduction of recycling services for over 50% of flats made? And after that, what further plans are there to increase the number of flats to have the facilities to recycle? And if there are no plans for other flats to have recycling facilities, what are the challenges you have to overcome?
So in terms of flats recycling, RAP did a report for us a couple of years ago just to review our current performance and what measures we could take to improve performance. And in terms of flats, if we got 100% of flats in the borough on a recycling service, they estimated that it would impact the overall performance by 0.2%. So it's not a significant increase. So, you know, if we got all flats on, it would be probably 0.1% increase on our overall recycling performance. And for that reason, although we are working with property management companies to get the appropriate facilities in place, obviously this isn't going to be a significant step forwards in terms of our recycling performance. So the programme is prioritising those that will give us the greatest improvement. That said, we are still continuing to work with property management companies because the challenges that we face are obviously having appropriate bin stores in order to accommodate the recycling boxes.
Chairman, can I come in there?
You've got warbles.
We've got a problem. I can't understand.
No, we've got the warbles in the chamber.
Yeah, perhaps someone in the chamber isn't muting.
There sounds like there's a audio one in there somewhere.
Can you hear me clearly, or is it crackling?
No, that's fine.
Right, okay.
The officer, go through it again very quickly.
I'll just ask Claire to just repeat what she said. If we're still getting an issue, we might have to just try and change Claire's microphone.
I would suggest that, yeah.
Lovely.
Thank you, Norma.
Can you hear me now? Is it coming through clearly now?
Loud and clear.
Okay, so I'll just go back from the beginning. In terms of impact, RAP did a report that anticipated that if we got all flats in the borough onto the recycling scheme, that would give us 0.2% on our overall recycling performance. We are working with property management companies to introduce recycling facilities wherever possible. There are a few that face challenges because the bin stores don't have capacity to introduce recycling containers at the moment, so they will require infrastructure works in order to introduce recycling facilities. So we are working with the property management companies to enable that to happen. But that obviously will take some time. And in terms of prioritisation within the programme, because it's 0.2%, we are focusing on the items that will give us greater impact on our performance first and foremost. But we are still working with property management companies in the interim.
If I may just add to that, that while Claire's absolutely right, that the impact in terms of percentage of overall target is very small, we do accept that there are people who live in flats who very much want to recycle and make their contribution, and so that's definitely something that we consider to be an important thing. It may be a very small percentage to the overall target, but that willingness to participate is something that we really applaud and want to encourage.
Yes, thank you for that. Yes, lots of people who live in flats would like to be recycling, and, you know, there should be some way of them to recycle. You know, I'm glad you're looking into it, because it hasn't really been looked into in the past from my point of view. I mean, perhaps you did, but it didn't come over to me. Okay, thank you.
You're finished now, Norma.
Yes, thank you.
Any more supplements on this one? Chamber?
Yes, please, if I might, Chair.
Thank you.
Can I just ask how we're working with Ron Avon, the Community Housing Association, regarding the flats, most of which would be in their management?
We are in regular communication with them. I understand they have got funding for some of the flats to look at the bin store arrangements to help develop those, but we are still working with them, and we are looking at other plans to source the funding. But yeah, we are in continuous discussions with them as to how we can improve the facilities for flats, because I agree it is really important that everyone has that opportunity to recycle.
Thank you.
You okay there? You were okay there, Councillor Clarkson? Hello?
Yes, thank you.
And while I do that, is question 7 is yours, Councillor Clarkson.
Thank you, Chair. This again is more around the background information, and it's regarding 3.6.2c, collection points for plastic film, stretchy plastic as we call it. This is something that seems to be quite fluid as to where the collection points are and how it's being collected. Can you give us some update in how this might go forward curbside and how we are letting members of the public know where these collection sites are currently that are active to try and remove that barrier to extra recycling?
So there are several collection points available at present, including, I believe, CoStar, Herb, the Heritage Centre, and several Premier stores. Sorry. So there are several collection points available. I believe Capital Valley Plastics, our partner that collects the plastic film for recycling, has I assume the link was on their website, but I have to look into that. In terms of long-term plans for collecting the plastic film, that is something that we are looking towards and working towards as part of the wider infrastructure review, and it will be a legal requirement to collect plastic film from 2027 in Wales.
You okay with that, Councillor Clarkson?
Yes, I think Councillor Hall's got a supplementary.
Well, please lead in, Councillor Haller.
This is obviously about plastic film, which is a big concern because it builds up in a big way. It bulks it up. It puts top hatting into it. As a family, we are avid recyclers, and we had a conversation with a company in the north of the borough that currently recycles plastic, and they've removed their recycling containers in the north of the borough, and they've done it because of the contaminated plastic that goes into the bins. Now, long term, if we are going to collect that type of plastic, some of the plastic is reusable, but once you put contaminated plastic into it, i.e. harder plastics, you then have a problem where all the plastic that you've got is really difficult to recycle. In fact, you can't recycle it, so then it becomes a landfill issue. So is there any measures that we could put in place, or any education that we could put into place to really demonstrate the fact that stretchy plastic is stretchy plastic and hard plastic is hard plastic, and if they move together, then we've got a contamination, and that's the reason why that company in the north has removed those bins, because people were putting contaminated plastic in, not purposely, but they were putting it in because they thought that that plastic was recyclable, and there's a big difference between the different types of plastics that can be recycled, as you well know, and how we move that forward. And that would also go into the curbside issue about stretching plastic, because stretchy plastic, again, would be then in a situation where it could be contaminated, and contaminated waste obviously costs the authority money.
Yeah, that's certainly something that I can take away and look into doing some education around that. Obviously, as part of the Raise the Rate campaign, we're regularly running communications around various elements of the recycling service, so that's certainly something that we can look to do moving forwards.
Okay with that, Councillor Haller?
Yeah. Yes, thank you.
Can I
Yeah, right.
supplementary as well, please?
Right, please do, Councillor Watkins.
Sorry, can I just clarify? Because I think part of the question was how do we let people know where these places are that they can recycle the stretchy plastic? So is it by going to that company's website? Is that how they know? And if it is, how do they then know to go to that particular website?
Our website, the Torfaen Council website, if you click on the stretchy plastics, it directs you to the Capital Valley website.
You okay with that, Councillor Watkins?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. So what you're saying, Claire, is that all the information you need for all our recycling is on the council website.
Yes, it's on the Torfaen Council website, that's right.
Which is the font of all information on the subject. Right, thank you. Next is Councillor Williams, has now got us on to the other bit of the question 8, and he will be going on the enforcement issues. He did remind us that when we got onto the subject. There we are. Councillor Williams.
Thank you, Chair. Obviously, at 4.1, you've confirmed that waste enforcement is not an entirely new concept. So it's really what sort of background we've got in terms of the issue of fixed penalty notices, Section 46 notices, that gives you some guidelines, if you like, in terms of the application of that policy and what you've learned from that. Obviously, we've seen that there's some detail about a couple of other authorities further in the report, the percentage that actually go to that, but it's really, have we got that kind of data that's going to help us inform us in terms of application of policy as suggested?
I haven't got any data for the past few years because there haven't been any Section 46 notices in recent history. So there is no precise Torfaen data in relation to this. However, this is why I included the Blaenau Gwent and Merthyr Tydfil examples within the report. To give an example of, you can see the high volume of education that takes place, starting off at 12,000 in one authority and 5,000 in another, but that reduces down drastically to, you know, between, I think it was 5 and 35. So you can see how greatly just the education has an impact, but also just knowing that you've got that enforcement backstop that has such a significant impact on changing the behaviour. So those are our best benchmarks at this point in time.
Thank you for that. I think that clarifies the position in terms of the fact there isn't prior data, so we've had to extrapolate looking across at other authorities, which is fair enough, so thanks for the clarification.
Any supplementaries from anybody else? Right, question number 9 is, sorry? Question number 9 is from Councillor Watkins.
Thank you. Referring to paragraph 4.3, we've been given the percentages in terms of residents' views, but for context, how many people completed the Raise the Rate survey?
In relation to that particular question, there were 1,537 responses, 1,529 responses.
I think we feel as a committee that both bits of information would be useful. It is useful to get it in percentages, that does tell us one thing, but actual figures is very useful for us to know as well. Thank you.
Are you finished on that, Councillor Watkins? Any supplements on that question?
No, thank you.
Right, thank you. Next question, question 10, Councillor Parish again.
Thank you. This relates to item 4.4 in the report. Within the emails and social media. Somebody come in then. Can you hear me okay?
I think yes. I think it may have been Councillor Ashley again, so Niall's just politely muted him.
Oh, right. Okay. Okay, I start again. This is relates to point 4.4 in the report. Within the emails and social media comments, There's someone coming in again to stop me. Is there an echo?
Yes, sorry, Norma. It does sound like there's feedback coming over the system that we can hear ourselves on like a 2-second delay on Teams.
Okay, if you just give us a sec, I'm just going to go and speak to Niall a sec, see if there's something we can do.
Okay.
I didn't think it was me.
We're just going to leave the meeting from the chambers end, basically, on the system. So if you can all just stay online a sec, please. We'll try that first, and if that fails, we'll have to just reboot the meeting entirely. So we'll pray that Plan A goes well.
Oh, they're going to do the switch the computer off and on routine.
Yeah, we're good to go again now, Chair.
Thank you. Right, my question relates to point 4.4 in the report. Within the emails and social media comments that the committee received from the public ahead of this meeting, it is clear that there is still some confusion around about what the council would like residents, businesses, etc. to do in terms of their recycling. I mean, why should this be? And alongside the targeted education of specific areas under the policy, will there be more educational campaigns aimed at everyone in order to change behaviour? If so, what initiatives have been considered so far?
Yes, we have got education campaigns planned. So there's one that's being launched right now, and you will be seeing food waste promotional adverts across Torvine. In addition to that, we are planning to do a programme of education and engagement prior to any enforcement taking place. So we are planning more detailed communication. So thus far, Raise the Rate has been around things like Torvine Talks and social media, but you will be seeing a greater presence across the borough. We've also been attending local events to engage with residents as well. I can see Mark wants to come in there as well.
Thanks. Yes, Claire's correct in terms of recently as well. It's also to say that officers have been attending engagement activities, but also we're anticipating going into schools as well. So we'll be engaging with pupils as well to get that message across to future generations. As with a lot of advertising and education, we do tend to find as well that once you educate the children help and put peer pressure on their parents. We had significant success through that with the road safety campaigns that we've done. So we're using the same approach there as well in terms of getting into the schools and getting that behavioural change right at the very start.
Right, thank you. A lot of people complain that their neighbours don't put food caddies out. So, you know, some people are doing their best, you know, to get neighbours to do what they should be doing. But I mean, I know there's a problem with, you know, some food caddies, but something ought to be done specifically about that, because I think it's a huge thing. And another thing that I noticed, people are saying bigger families should have bigger bins. Well, I thought if you did have a large family, there were larger bins, you know, for them. Are we right in that, or am I right in that, or wrong? And another thing, somebody was complaining about the red bag if it goes ahead. They'd have to wash the cans and things and cartons and plastic before going in. Well, I thought we all had to wash those before going out, because I've been doing it for years. But other people obviously don't realise it. And was the other thing? Oh yeah, the cardboard in the blue bags. They don't like the blue bags. They said they were being blown away. And another thing, when the blue bags were emptied, they're just thrown down and they get mixed up, because some people are saying, well, that wasn't the blue bag I put out. You know what I mean? Because it's not clean or something. And these things, I know we should know about it, but these are the things that ought to go out again to remind people what we should be doing right from the beginning. Well, it'll be from the beginning for some people if they don't recycle now. Does that make any sense, what I've said?
Norma, you want seeking clarity on all these matters.
Yeah, well, I know Mark's been writing it down, I think, when I've been saying it. Okay.
Chair, if I may, I think Councillor Parish makes a really important point, which is that there are a lot of moving parts in the whole recycling system, and it's got that kind of context around it. That means it will continue to change and develop, and so people take years sometimes to get used to a way of doing things. But in the recycling world, things have been moving pretty fast. So there's a good reason why for many people it can sometimes be confusing. But I think, firstly, the issue around neighbours who resent others who don't do their part, that's a very key reason why the enforcement policy is so important, so that we have got that action of last resort that can be taken if people absolutely refuse to play their part in recycling. With regard to the other sort of shades of how things should be presented and how they should be done, I think it's clear from the culture that we've adopted and the tone that we've adopted that those who are really doing their best and who want to present their waste in an acceptable way will not be penalised in that way, and that we will always be happy to support and to work with them. So I suppose the general advice to people would be putting out your waste in a way that if you were collecting it, you'd feel comfortable picking it up. It might be a good piece of advice in all contexts, but very much take the point that those small things can feel quite weighty to those who are most responsible and most keen to play their parts, and that the information that we supply needs to be clear and readily available, as I'm sure Claire will back up, and Mark.
So there will be information sent out with these simple remarks in.
So obviously you've raised a few points there. In terms of the food caddies, that is a key area that we are targeting with the latest series of communications. We're specifically focusing on food waste because we know the food waste participation could be much higher and our capture rates of food are quite low. So definitely we will be focusing communications around that. In terms of larger families, they can request a larger bin, but they do need to show that they are recycling what they can. In terms of the red bag proposal, yes, people should already be washing their cans and plastics, as you say, but that doesn't necessarily happen, and that's why the preferred option is to collect materials separately where possible and to use these type of receptacles, because people are more inclined to then clean their recycling. So we have a better quality recyclate at the end, and it's easier for us to recycle that material. So in terms of what people need to do, of course, if the red bag is approved and introduced, literature will go out alongside that to explain to people again what goes where. And similarly, during the events recently, we have been handing out leaflets reminding people what goes in your black box, what goes in your food caddy, what goes in your blue bag. So that information is being handed out on a regular basis as well.
Right, thank you.
Can I ask a supplementary, please?
Please do.
Thank you. With that information that you're handing out at the moment, does it just describe what goes where, in which receptacle? Does it also explain the need for cleaning, washing and providing it in a certain way as well? Because that's clearly an issue for some people.
I don't think it specifically mentions the washing at the moment, but that might be something that's picked up through other communications, but we can certainly look into that.
I will make an observation, because Norma's actually Councillor Parish is making a very good point. A lot of us rely on looking out the door and seeing what our neighbours are doing as a way of finding out what we do this week. It's a very social activity, recycling. We forget that. What have they got out this week? My wife does it. And, the black bin's out, it's normal marker, but then we're going to mark the brown bins, the red bins, red bags, a whole lot's going to be out there now as to what we do this week. And I sometimes wonder whether our stuff is actually as simple as it could be, because all you need is a list for what you do this week. I've never been able to find one that works it out as simple as that, to be honest. They put your head out the door on a Wednesday night, on a Tuesday night, and see what other people are doing seems to be quite a marker for a lot of people. Is there any way we can incorporate that into our publicity, because it's actually quite valuable? I wonder, Claire or Mark, whether you come back with that one, because I do that, and I'm supposed to be in the know on this.
If I might, Chair, I just did 2 clicks on my computer on the council website and was straight into bin collection days and what goes in which bin. Both of those things appear immediately on the page after 2 clicks. So I think it's pretty prominent. Perhaps what we're not very good at doing is promoting the council's website so that people know where to go and how easy it is to find that information. And particularly, I think the reintroduction of the A to Z guide to recycling is a recent development which is really helpful. So perhaps we can all play our part as members in encouraging our communities to be aware that the council's website is actually very useful on this.
Chair, can I come in for a minute with that? Not everyone has the facilities to look on the website, and some people would never ever look on the website. That's why it's so important that they get a leaflet or something like that to just jog their memories what they should be doing. It's all very well to say it's on the website, but it doesn't, people don't automatically look at that. Chair, can I say Councillor Yowell has had his hand up for some time.
Didn't that now? So, Councillor Yowell.
Thank you very much, Councillor Parish. It's just a couple of reflections, which I think, off the back of what we said. One, actually, I was going to, off the back of what Councillor Morgan said, I was actually going to say what Norma has just said. It's great, yes, that the rates of sort of IT literacy are probably increasing with each year and with each cohort. But I think we have to ensure that we are providing information in a way that is easily digestible for as many people as possible. So we can't just default to saying it's. I know it's 2 clicks on the website, Councillor Morgan, but we need to ensure that we are making this information available as much as possible. The 2 points I had, though, one, go back to Norma's original question. With all the communication we're going out there, I think it would be quite useful if we actually sort of communicated what our commitment as a council is to our citizens when we are asking them to do more or to change their behaviours. And I think that should, and we can all look at it, reflect back on the street scene issues that we have with bin collections. I think Norma is right. If I think back to some of the streets in the middle of our ward, you do have bins and bags. It's like a game of snakes and ladders some mornings when the numbering of the bins or the bags are not necessarily where they could or they should be. And again, I think that I've had complaints that sometimes, despite having conversations with previous senior members of staff about talking to council staff about actually putting things back in a more sort of respectful manner, we still have instances of bags and bins being thrown about. So I think we need to have a greater commitment that we are going to take care of that street scene property whilst going through this transition. Which also brings me on to a question I know we raised when this all first kicked off, when we were looking at the three weekly collection rate, but it didn't seem to go anywhere off the back of our member seminar. And I know it costs money, and I know we have to think about it, but I think we need a greater commitment actually what the council is going to do about litter that does many of the terrace street properties, the terrace streets in particular, litter becomes a massive problem on a big day when people might not have used their net and there's just a lot of rubbish left on the streets. And actually, yes, it is great that we have either councillors or volunteers go out and do this in the community, but at the same time, if we are asking people to recycle more, we need to take more of a handle on actually the litter that we are creating in the collection of the rubbish. I think we just need to take that back. And the other point, I'm not quite sure how well formed this is, but it does go back actually about what community approaches to enforcement and education might be. There are examples, I think, from Barking and Dagenham, and it was in Dagenham specifically back in like 2008, 2009. On some of the estates, there was a massive problem with fly tipping. And essentially, we got to a point where basically people were encouraged to communicate back to the council if there were outlying properties or outlying bits of the community that were actually serially fly tipping or not necessarily taking the best sort of community-wide view to that street scene issue. I'm not saying we necessarily set up a shop a neighbour hotline in terms of actually sort of persistent offences, but I think we need to think about what those community approaches are, because this has to be, I think Councillor Ashley in our pre-agenda meeting talked about this being a contract between the council and citizens to get to a better place so we can actually achieve some of these targets. I think it might be useful looking at how we get the community to work together to ensure that everybody is playing their part.
Thank you. Thank you, Nathan. That social contract is so important. It's why we do it, and that's where we've got so far. Mark Thomas?
Thank you, Chair. I've just busily making notes, and that is comments made by Councillor Yule and Councillor Parish are well made, and with my commitment that we will investigate and proceed along that, especially in terms of that social contract and the doing our part in terms of being respectful to the street scene equipment and the like. So yes, definitely on that one. The other one, again, commitments that I will take away and take action on, communicating in terms of recycling offer to ensure that residents who don't have access to the website, we'll look at how we better communicate with them as well. So in terms of, I'll speak to Neil Jones in terms of our comms campaign, for example. There are a wide range of routes in which Neil intends to access and communicate with our communities. So we'll look to see what we can do in terms of factor that into his plans as well.
Thank you. That's another commitment to go on our list. Thank you, Mark. Right. Question 11, Councillor Clarkson.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, it sort of follows on from what we've just been discussing in some length. And looking at the comments we received in the correspondence from residents, it's very clear that the message about engagement, education and encouragement first isn't quite getting across and hitting home. The message that people are picking up on, and there is a lot of negativity around fines, fixed penalty, notices. So I suppose the concern is, how do we actually counter that to reassure people that you're not going to be charging in straight away with penalties, but there is going to be a lot of help and encouragement and education prior to that being an absolute last resort.
Obviously, in terms of how we communicate, this change is really key, and if that message hasn't come across clearly enough on social media or wherever the people are commenting, then we need to make sure that those posts are revisited and reframed to make sure that we're getting the engagement first message across, because that is very much the message we've tried to get across both in the scrutiny report and the policy, and in the information that we've provided around the policy. So we need to make sure that that message is getting across and that those people are reassured in terms of what our approach is.
Can I just come back on that a minute? That is the crucial thing. How are we going to revisit those posts? People are not clicking on links to read reports. They will only see the headline. So you know, there's going to be quite a bit of skill involved with how we message and target these. And it could be that there needs to be two-way conversation within social media so that they can be picked up, and people are more likely to read the comments than to ever click on a link to any information outside of the main post.
Yes, agreed. I'll touch base with our communications colleagues and ensure that they take action in regards to that.
Is any more supplements? No, right. Councillor, question 13, Councillor Watkins.
Thank you. Yes, with regards to new materials that become recyclable. So firstly, how do we become aware of new materials that are now recyclable? And more importantly, how do we inform residents and businesses? How's the information kept up to date and signposted for people?
As Councillor Morgan mentioned earlier, the A to Z has been reintroduced to the website, so that's a key method of communicating what materials can go where, and obviously we keep updating that as anything changes. There shouldn't be significant changes regularly in terms of what's recyclable, but as and when new materials come on stream, so for example the batteries or the textiles, and you can now put those in your black box, we'd obviously run a communications campaign on that, and it wouldn't just be social media. There would be information in Torvine Talks, there would be information, there's information on the boards in reception in civic centres, so we would put up notices in local hubs, libraries, etc., to ensure that message gets across to those that aren't necessarily online as well.
You okay with that, Councillor Watkins?
Thank you. So I think that definitely covers things that the council have decided we're now going to tackle better, like the batteries and the textiles. But how do you become aware, say, a particular item of packaging is now recyclable, something like that?
So obviously we're constantly reviewing the markets in terms of what materials there are markets for. So there's certain things that we don't recycle, such as a good example is cartons or Tetra Packs, which have only been more recently recyclable, so we're monitoring that. And a lot of that intelligence also comes from the regional partnership working that we do. So we're on a number of waste groups where we become aware regionally and nationally of what is happening with certain materials. And so it's just keeping up to date, really, with what's happening in the waste industry. So we do, officers do monitor that on a regular basis.
You okay with that, Councillor Watkins?
Yes, thank you. I believe Councillor Hall has got a question.
Right, and then you're the next question.
I take on board that you mentioned about this new website with the A to Z of where it ever goes. But again, I think we've had conversation within the room today that our residents that don't use that facility. A few months ago, I went to Spain to visit a dear friend, and on his fridge, there was a poster, a fridge magnet with everything that could be recycled in the boxes that were on the street, not at home. And it categorised those. Is there a way that we could give some form of information that could be posted to those residents to give them the information that we need? And I'm sure if there was a visual within their building that they would look at it and go, hey, yes, that's what's got to be done and how it's got to be done. And I think that might benefit the recycling rate that we've got currently right now. I think it's something to look at. I think it was mentioned before. Thank you.
Yes, we do have that type of leaflet. Like I mentioned earlier, we were giving out that sort of leaflet at the events last weekend and in previous events, and it is something that we are looking at how we get that to households. So it has gone out to every household in Torvine Talks as well, so the version of the leaflet's slightly bigger in an edition of Torvine Talks, so that has gone to every household already. But it is something that, again, we're looking at doing moving forward. So as we do the education campaign, again, there will be leaflets involved. If the red bag is approved and we're delivering the red bag to every household, that's an ideal opportunity to, again, remind residents of what goes where. So, of course, we'll take the opportunity, if we're delivering a red bag, to also deliver literature at the same time.
Thank you.
I was just going to say, we have in the past had Dan Can and Elvis in the cab for other things. Is there any chance of getting a novel character on this? Because that does seem to go down well. It's a chance for Neil and his gang to have a go at this. It just, you know, Nick's got a good point. Fridge magnets and things like that, they might be a bit novel, but they certainly put the point over. It's a bit of fun, but it's got a serious point with our social contract. You know, making this something that sticks in the mind. Dan Can certainly did, even though it was a bit corny, it worked. Have you got any idea of anything like that?
Yes, we certainly discussed Dan Can and other mascots. There's mascots available to hire from RAP Cymru. They hire out food waste mascots and other mascots. So it's certainly something that we've looked into. And I think in future events, it's definitely something that we would consider reinvigorating. Although I must say the most popular thing at the weekend seemed to be the horn on the recycling collection vehicle. So the kids loved jumping up and going up and down on the seat and beeping the horn. Yeah.
Next is Jane Councillor Watkins again.
Thank you. Yeah, moving on to the issue of side waste and top hatting, brought in on paragraph 4.6. We all know that some residents put their waste in other residents' bins without permission if their own bin is full. Have you considered that when you were forming this policy? And also, what flexibility can be offered in terms of side waste or top hatting on the occasions when the waste hasn't been collected?
There's always an element of reasonableness when it comes to enforcement action. And of course, you know, we would not look to take action until we've engaged with the resident. So there are a number of reasons where there might be side waste. If it's a miscollection, of course, we wouldn't enforce. That's our issue, not the resident's issue. If somebody's dumped in their bin, then we'd be able to take that into account. And if people are producing excess waste because they're genuinely a larger family, of course, we'd have that conversation about whether they're eligible for a larger bin, and we would look to help them recycle more, or if they're recycling all they can, then we'd provide them with a larger bin if they're a larger family. So yes, you know, we will be looking to engage with the residents. We're not going to be blindly issuing FPNs if there are legitimate reasons for that side waste or top hatting.
So can I just confirm, is this something that you're planning to do going forward? Because I certainly know in my ward there's a few streets that constantly have this problem with top hatting. Now, whether it's that family that are doing it or other families, you know, putting the waste in, I don't know. But as far as I can tell at the moment, those bins just don't get collected. And as far as I'm aware, those families are not engaged with, the bins are just left. So is this your plan going forward, or is this a plan that's already in place?
That will be the plan going forwards. Okay, so yeah, that would be the plan going forwards rather than what's happening right now.
Are you okay on that, Councillor Watkins?
Yes, thank you.
I mean, I got a supplement on it. I've just thought about it. Are you going to involve members on this? Because it does seem that positive engagement on this would be involving members. We know our area and possibly know the people involved. If you're getting social about it, it's a possible involvement for members in there.
We did recently send out an email to members asking them for feedback in terms of areas that they felt that we should be targeting with education. So that's certainly something that we would very much welcome, is feedback to that question that was sent out a couple of weeks ago.
Sorry, sorry, are you happy with that, Councillor Ashley?
Yes, I am. I'm just wondering. Just wondering whether members knowing hotspots in their area for non-recycling and possible action is a little bit like car parking and dogs and littering. We certainly know that in our areas where we've got non-compliance on recycling. Going out with other councillors, I certainly got the impression certain members knew that about recycling as well, because it's obvious if you've got courts and nobody recycles in them, that's something members know about as well. I certainly know in my area where we get recycling and we don't, because you go round and you know that. It's something maybe we can help by targeting with, not necessarily, not the enforcement action, I don't want to be anywhere near that, but certainly with regards to positive reinforcement.
If I may, Chair, I think Claire just mentioned that it's something that we're very actively seeking is members' specialist knowledge of their areas, and only very recently members have been asked to advise about any hotspot areas that they know from their local knowledge. If that request didn't get through to you, do let us know. And I think it'll be something we'll be seeking going forward as well, Claire, at every opportunity where it's appropriate.
Yeah, it's not just about surveys, is it? It's actually on the ground stuff, which you personally are very good at. I know that, and people gaining knowledge and feeding back in positively into the system. I don't think members are good at. Well, obviously, it's like with the business of the other aspects of enforcement we do as a council. It's not a place I want to be as a member, to be honest. Okay, next is Councillor Williams.
Sorry.
No, sorry, I've got it wrong. I've got it wrong. Sorry, it is Councillor Williams. Sorry, it is number 14. I was slightly adrift after making that comment.
Thank you. Sorry, can I just ask one more supplementary on the...
Yes, please do.
Just for clarity, because they are two separate issues, you said that there is some flexibility if the waste isn't collected. Is that ongoing now, or is that something you plan to do in the future? Because again, I know at the moment some of the residents complain they've been missed and then they've sort of not been collected because they've put extra waste in, so they look like the top hat in.
I can't comment on individual examples. I think that would be something that would need to be fed back to the service, and then we could respond on that.
So in theory, it is something that should be happening now. If they're a missed service, they should have a bit of flexibility to put extra waste in.
I would imagine so, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Right, sorry about that, Councillor Watkins. We seem to have got a thing going there on that one, so that'll be noted, I hope. Right, question 14 is Councillor Williams. Sorry about this, Councillor Williams.
Thanks, Chair. It was really just sort of, again, giving some context at 410, because it talked about officers not being able to visit every household in Blaen y Gwent, but giving some context about, well, how much time did this take, if you like, over what period of time to get that kind of information together? I guess the simple question is, do you have that contact with Blaen y Gwent that helps you to sort of plan your process effectively without wanting to go into any great detail?
We do have contacts within Blaen y Gwent, and we also are working closely with RAP Cymru, who can provide advice on any engagement campaigns that we run. In terms of the length of time, the two examples quoted in the report took place over 6 months, from September to March. And the number of people visited varied. So Blaen y Gwent visited just over 5,000, Merthyr just over 12,000, and obviously the number of people they were able to visit depends on how many officers they allocated to the task. You would encourage, if you were training up a team to do this activity, you wouldn't want them spending, say, more than 10 minutes at each household, but obviously a lot of the time residents might not be at home, so you might have to revisit a property, and then you would also set limits on how many times you go back to that property before you sort of assume, well, it's better just to move on to a different area as well. So we have we are working with REP on that. They've actually done a report into it with guidance as to how you should run that sort of engagement campaign, so we will be following that guidance.
That's very helpful, thank you.
Any supplements on this one? Okay, question 15, Councillor Gordon.
Thank you, Chair. Morning, everybody. As has been mentioned by other members, the last thing we'd want to do as members is sort of have enforcing fixed penalty notices on residents. That's an absolute last resort. Unfortunately, I'm sure it's one of the headlines that will come up in this meeting is that this is on the table. Can you give us some flavour of what the enforcement looks like? Will it be delivered in-house, or are we going to outsource that to sort of a private company to sort of chase enforcement? My worry being, I wouldn't want anybody to get a fixed penalty notice. I'd want to be working with our communities to educate ourselves about the needs to recycle and sort of raise the rate. And I don't see this as a punitive thing, really. So I think it'd be sort of a sad day if any enforcement notices are issued. However, I want some flavour of, will that be internal, or will we outsource this to a sort of private sector thing? Because there's been some bad experiences in this authority and other local authorities about engaging sort of private sector providers to provide this type of service, where they are perhaps slightly more overzealous than we would wish, and whether they work on a commission basis or something. I'd wish to avoid that. So just some flavour on what the enforcement team looks like, please. Thank you.
We would definitely be looking to do this internally because of everything that you've raised. It's got to be engagement first. If you were to get a contractor in, the focus would be on things like the number of FPNs issued. They tend to have been used in the past, as far as I'm aware, for littering campaigns rather than waste presentation, because waste presentation is a bit more complex, and the waste presentation process is longer anyway, because you do need to have that engagement and education first, then the issuing of a Section 46 notice before you'd move on to a fixed penalty. But yes, it will be an internal resource. We wouldn't be looking to go to a private contractor to deliver this, because we want to keep that focus on engagement first.
You okay with that, Cole?
Yeah, a brief supplement. I know Mark wants to come in as well. I mean, are we satisfied that we have sufficient staff in the authority to carry out that type of engagement, enforcement, or is there going to be new people coming in? Because I'm sure our residents are going to say, well, you're always missing our bloody bins, so we're going to have people to collect the bins in the first place without enforcing them when we put the wrong stuff in the wrong bag. So have we got that resource currently? Thank you.
Chair, if I can come in on this one.
Please do, Mark. Okay.
Yeah, we will be looking to recruit additional staff to come in to do the engagement. They will obviously be of a high quality, because this is an important factor for us. Going back very quickly, I think local authorities have learnt about the pitfalls of using external agencies. For example, civil parking enforcement, when that was first brought in, a number of authorities had used external agencies, and it didn't go down very well at all with the local communities. So definitely internal, acting as ambassadors as opposed to enforcement agents, and that's the approach we intend to take. But yes, we will be recruiting high quality personnel to come in and to engage.
Thank you, Mark. Want to come back on any of that at all, Carl? Are you okay?
No, that's fine. I'm satisfied with the response. Thank you, Chair.
Right. Right. 16, Councillor Clarkson again.
Thank you, Chair. This is around 4.14 in the report and the four-step process. And just a little bit of more information, if possible, regarding how the waste crews communicate with the education and enforcement teams regarding what areas, where they've left bins, where there's been the top hat in, where there's been contaminated waste, how that information is then fed back to the enforcement and engagement team so that they can go and do the necessary education. They're very, very busy crews. At the moment, it's already a little bit of an issue for them, you know, putting stickers on things and bins going in the back of the wagons and having to report that back. So a bit more information, if possible, about how the two services of the actual waste collection and the engagement and enforcement will link up to share intelligence.
So in terms of areas to target, we're taking a number of approaches in terms of just the engagement first and foremost. So obviously, as mentioned earlier, we've asked councillors about areas within their ward that might be good to target, but we've also done the same with crews. So we've engaged with our collection crews to ask if there's particular areas that we need to target. Moving forwards, we are looking to introduce in-cab technology, which will also help the crews to report any properties where there's recurring contamination or damaged bins. So that will obviously really help to speed up the process and improve the communications in the longer term. In the medium term, I would envisage that the enforcement officers would work very closely alongside the collection crews. They'd be based within the same office, within the same management structure, and so there would be that opportunity to feedback, you know, verbally initially. But yeah, we would be looking to digitalise that process moving forwards.
So this is an area where we'll have some more to learn, and it'll probably be sort of evolving over the first 12 months of the service. Possibly could come back to scrutiny in the future. Thank you.
Right, you finished on that. Right, next is question 17, Councillor Williams.
Thank you, Chair. This relates to 415 in the report, and I'll take both questions that I have here. The first really was, you've mentioned that prior to issuing fixed penalty notice, you're looking at any extenuating circumstances, and obviously what can happen is that you can have an increased number of residents in a household. For example, as happens relatively frequently these days, other family members who you think have left home come back to live with you. I speak personally here, but I won't go any further than that. So given that, is there scope for those residents to apply for short-term interventions, be proactive to actually say, we've got more of us, can we have a bigger bin for 6 months? That kind of thing. And secondly, we know we're going to be generating extra waste for this period. Can we sort of let you know, and so that, if you like, you've got that intelligence to sort of give us more recycling capability? Okay? Is that fairly clear?
Yes, thank you. Obviously, if an additional bin is required for a period, then people can apply and give their reasons for their application. And obviously, if it's because there's a large number of residents in the household, then that should be fine as long as the household is recycling everything that it can. Obviously, what we wouldn't want to be doing is delivering a bin, taking it away, delivering a bin, taking it away every, just as and when. So it would need to be assessed on a case-by-case basis. But of course, situations do change, and we are sympathetic to that, and we would try to accommodate wherever possible.
Thank you for that. And I think what I'm trying to suggest, what the paragraph seems to be suggesting is it's reactive. What I'm suggesting is residents want to be proactive, that you'll deal with it sympathetically and take that forward. So I'll move into the second part of the question on 415, when you've talked about if residents are unable to comply with Section 46 notice due to mental or physical disability, it will be taken into account. So how will that be managed, and who assesses that mental or physical disabilities? Is a referral up? Just trying to understand this a little better, because obviously it's not something we'd expect the the waste disposal officer to be able to have a lot of knowledge about.
So obviously the managers would probably make the ultimate decision as to whether to progress with an FPN or not. But we would expect officers to be aware of situations, and often in these circumstances, from previous experience, there tends to be carers or family members who are involved who brief us on situations. So again, you know, it can be reactive, but like you say, similarly with the additional bin capacity, it can be proactive. So it might be that we're already aware, for example, is that person on an assisted collection service, and is that related to the fact that they have some sort of disability? And so often we are already aware of members of the community where, for example, if they're suffering with dementia, they might not be able to segregate their waste for recycling, and therefore we would make allowances for that. So it can be reactive, but it can also be proactive, where we are already aware of it, you know, reasons within that property why those residents can't recycle.
That's very helpful. Sorry if I can come back immediately, because I suppose the concern we had was that this may, the fact of introducing an enforcement policy could cause some anxiety, particularly with those groups. So if we can do something in terms of reinforcing the fact we'll use our known knowledge and sensitivity, I think that will be helpful when it comes to some of the comms, just to flag that up.
If I may, Chair, as well, it may be useful for members to look at para 4.3, the formal review element of the policy itself, which talks about these issues and how elected members can make requests for a formal review based on those very things.
Thank you for that.
Through the Chair, could I ask a supplementary on that, please?
Please do.
Yeah, regarding, as you've just mentioned, that review, and that members can actually ask for a review. It talks about documentation and circumstances, so it's a limited ask. So I think the question I've got is, can you explain a little bit more about that?
Chair, if I can come in here, I guess it's obviously this thank you. This is a flexible approach, really. Ultimately, it'll be down to a senior officer as well to make that decision. There's a number of, if I get the question correct, is how can we determine whether or not a person is vulnerable or not? I can give some advice that in terms of, if there is the slightest doubt that someone is vulnerable, a senior officer will make that decision, and we will err on the side of caution rather than be too strict on the matter. Ordinarily, we would, as Claire said, if there's social workers involved or a member of the family can suggest that a person is vulnerable, then we will take a very pragmatic and supportive approach, and we'll determine that going forward as well, obviously. But I hope that gives some comfort to Scrutiny, but quite more than willing to provide more detailed information going forward.
As Councillor Williams and Councillors Williams and Clarkson finished with that one.
I'd just like to raise another point to that. The formal review process states that requests made on behalf of a person who is a vulnerable adult by an elected member, but then goes on to say documentation is provided in relation to a condition which directly affects the ability to progress the case, such as, and again, it's about who's making that decision and what's meant by documentation, because that's not something that is always available to some people. So maybe that's an area that could be looked at to give a little bit more clarity and make it a little bit more broad in its application.
Could I also make an observation there as well? Because what you seem to be saying, Mark, is that senior officers will take a view on that, whether it be social workers, MO, or the carer for the person. I mean, I'll give an example. I've got people in this house with autism, and to get an autism observation is quite, or ADHD observation these days is very, very difficult. I mean, GP would probably give you one, but if I say I'm a carer for somebody with that particular condition, a family carer, is that good enough? This is the problem.
Chair, if I can come back on that, please. What we're looking at, obviously, we'll look at this issue going forward, but from previous experience as well, I know that some vulnerable people feel they're not obliged to have to disclose their disability as well. And that's a factor that we need to manage as well. So again, it's down to, yes, if there is documentation and if there is support that the vulnerable person or supporting people or families or carers are willing to share, that's fine. But sometimes you've got to recognise that someone is either A, unable, or B, unwilling to disclose that disability, and that's something that we need to manage as well.
I think members will like that approach, because it can get very prescriptive otherwise. Thank you for that.
Can I come in with a supplemental as well, please?
Please do, Councillor Watkins.
Can we safely assume then that the people who are employed to go out with the encouraging education side of all this, they'll be suitably trained to deal with vulnerable people?
There will be a training programme for the officers that will be involved in the process, yes.
Can I also ask a supplementary?
Please do.
This weekend, I put a post up on social media, and within the post of social media, somebody came out and said, I'm desperate for a bigger bin. I've got 7 in my household, and I've got a disabled person. I've been refused my bigger bin. Is there a better way of actually describing the criteria of why that person refused it? And again, I've asked to be reconsidered, but for that person to shout out on social media, that's pretty desperate to me, for somebody to pick it up afterwards.
Unfortunately, I don't know the specific details of that case, but, you know, obviously outside of this meeting, if that's forwarded to the team, I'm sure they would be happy to revisit it. I think a request would only be declined if there was evidence that the household wasn't recycling. As far as I understand it, that's the process. In terms of the transparency of the process, I'm sure that would be explained to the householder when they are visited to discuss the need for a bin. But again, without knowing the details of the individual case, it's very difficult to comment. But there is a process which, which does set out what officers should consider when reviewing an additional bin request.
Thank you. I think my concern was that this person shut out onto social media her issue. I picked it up, and officers have been informed about the situation, and hopefully that will be dealt with in an appropriate manner. Thank you.
Did you get me on that, Mark? Did you want to come back in on this?
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, Councillor Hawler, if on specific issues, as I say, we're unable to comment specifically, but if you pass that information on to me, well, I'm always keen to review and understand sort of the operation of the service as well. So happy to engage on that one outside of this meeting.
Thank you then. Have you finished on that, Nick?
Yes, thank you.
Right. Councillor Yeo, 19.
Thank you, Chair. And if I may, I've actually got to go at 10 to, because I've got another physical meeting in a different building at 12 o'clock. So as all my questions have been loitering down the back end of the the paper. Would you mind if I take my 3 in one go?
3.
Fantastic, thank you very much. Question number 19 then, and this is referring to paragraph 4.18. And this is about the doorstep campaign once it gets going. So will we as councillors be informed as to where and when the doorstep campaign will take place? I guess we had a question coming out of the pre-agenda meeting. Will any of your team of the TCBC officers be accompanying those people we bring in to run the doorstepping campaign to ensure that we have a joined up understanding of issues going forward?
So our officers will be leading on the engagement campaign, and we can certainly share information with councillors as to which areas we'd be targeting. That's going to be determined by, as I mentioned earlier, the feedback we get from councillors, crews, but also participation surveys that we've undertaken to see which areas we need to target because of low participation in the food waste service. So we will be primarily targeting food waste, but of course information will be available on other recycling services as well. But that is now going to be led by the authority and authority officers.
Okay, so I guess the first answer is that, but basically, like if, for example, you start off in week 1, it'll be in Panteg, you'll make sure that Councillor Parish, Councillor Hunt and I will be made aware of them, will be made aware of that in advance, so actually we can be on hand to talk to residents that week you're going around the ward. I guess the second question then is, I think it's great if we are doing...
21 you're doing, Nathan.
No, so I'm just referring back to my question 19.
Oh, sorry about that.
Sorry, sir. But I guess but also it's quite encouraging if it is going to be the staff, like I said, leading engagement. But I guess there was another question there. Are we confident we've got the capacity then to do that engagement properly from just within the current staff complement within the department?
So whilst it will be managed by existing staff, we will obviously need additional resources as well, which we've got allocated SPF funding for, which I believe is outlined in the report. So it will be a mixture, but obviously we'll be training them up ourselves. We'll be going out with them ourselves as a in terms of managing the service.
Okay, thank you. Then Stuart was right. My next question is jumping ahead, is number 21, and this refers to paragraph 5.4. And so there's a question here about what local partners have contributed to the development of this policy and the development of the process that you're setting out. How closely are we working, for example, with our registered social landlords to encourage their tenants to recycle?
So, as mentioned earlier, we are working closely with property management companies and landlords to introduce recycling where we can. So, obviously, that is taking place. In terms of development of the policy, that's been done based on advice and guidance and support from RAP Cymru, and obviously liaising with other local authorities, reviewing other local authorities' policies as well, and of course taking into account our existing policy that I referenced earlier. In terms of the engagement first focus of the Public Protection Service policy.
Thank you then, but just to clarify then, so has the current policy, have we engaged other existing public service stakeholders within the borough on the development of this policy? I understand and acknowledge we might have spoken to other local authorities outside the jurisdiction, but have we spoken to any of our partners within Torvine as we've developed it?
Not specifically those partners, no. But obviously this is why we're bringing it to scrutiny at this point prior to taking it to Cabinet.
Okay, thank you very much. Lastly then, and this is question number 24, which is about the appendix. Sorry, Mark, you're trying to get in.
Sorry, so yes, just to let you know, let's say the policy that we developed as well is with local partnerships. Is a joint venture as well between Treasury Department, Local Government Association and Welsh Government as well. So just to give you comfort as well, whilst we will engage with local partners, that overarching sort of overview of our policy and advice on that policy is following best practice on a national level.
I want to supplement that with local partners, Mark.
Local partnership are an organisation in terms of with a partnership with the Welsh Government, so they're overseeing sort of national best practice. They're jointly owned by sort of the Majesty's Treasury, or His Majesty's Treasury now, and Welsh Government as well. So they implement best practice within local authorities in terms of a range of services. Okay, we'll go back to 24 now, Nathan, if you like.
Okay, thank you, Stuart, and thanks everyone else for your patience on allowing me to get 3 in a row. So question 24, it's about the letters that you've given us, or the draft the sample letters you've given us in the appendix for the various stages of escalation. And it's not really a question, but it's just more sort of a suggestion that we had coming off the back of it. Whether it's worth going back and rethinking how we're going to brand these communications, and indeed what the tone of these communications should be. And I think we all agreed actually in the pre-meeting that maybe putting them out as Torvine green letter-headed letters and having them written as if they were a formal letter coming from the authority to a resident is not the right way to go about this. Definitely not from the first couple of communication interactions. And I know at some point nobody's actually said the phrase today, but with the Keeping Up with the Joneses campaign, or the strapline that you're thinking about, is whether we actually need to develop separate sort of comms and branding for this campaign, and actually a communication is sent out, but also is written in a way that is much more going with the grain of what we've discussed about actually entering into a joint commitment between us and residents. So instead of actually telling people, because of this bylaw or this piece of legislation or this kind of instruction from Welsh Government, you are contravening X, Y and Z, it has to be a case of saying, look, Torvine is working with neighbours in your street to improve the recycling rates. What we are asking you to do is do your bit, take part in this campaign and take things forward. I did mention in the pre-meeting, I've done some stuff on this professionally before. I don't want to come in and tell you guys what to do or how to do your job, but I'm more than happy to actually have a chat. So I think basically we need to make everything as both as accessible and as compelling as possible. So we need to mitigate against coming across as being overly formal from the get-go, because we all know that sometimes that puts people off.
Who wants to answer that one? Thank you, Mark.
It's very much appreciated. We'll take that on board, and if we may, we will definitely engage to seek your advice on that as well going forward. But yeah, it's a good point, well made.
I also like to add my 5 penneth in that one. I have experience professionally as well on this, because I used to run the previous recycling scheme, and I also used to work for Avon Friends Youth, and we never got anywhere coming over like that. It's always touchy-feely friendly. I think Nathan's put it very succinctly, to be quite frank.
Just to add to that, obviously, these letters are taken from the templates that were given as examples of best practice from the Keeping Up with the Joneses campaign. So happy to take on board the feedback. And I agree that definitely the earlier letters need to be friendly, but the later letters obviously have to follow a set format and be more formal. And ultimately that's, we are looking to do this engagement first before we get to these letters anyway. So we completely understand that, yeah, we want to try the soft approach wherever possible first. But yeah, I completely take on board that maybe we can make some of the initial letters a bit more customer friendly.
You okay with that, Councillor Yole?
Yeah, thank you, everyone. And just to say, in 4 minutes, I'm going to have to buzz off, so apologies when I drop off. This time I'm dropping off on purpose, not because the internet was dropping.
Well done. Question 20 is me. I've got my second question. Once the doorstepping campaign has begun, how much flexibility will exist within the campaign should intelligence suggest that another area has become a greater concern?
Obviously, we will try and formulate a plan based on feedback already received, but obviously if there are new ideas that come through, we'll be happy to take those on board.
That's as far as an answer I can go. Which anybody else want to supplement on that? Okay. As we've had three from Nathan Yolt, the councillor. Question 22 is Councillor Nick Hawler.
Yes. In terms of potential risk, are you concerned by the possibility of increasing fly tipping, and have you contacted other local authorities who have implemented the enforcement in order to gauge their experience in this area? So I get that we're not going to do an enforcement now, but when we do, will there be any, have you discussed with other boroughs around us about the potential increase of fly tipping?
In terms of fly tipping, obviously we already have an enforcement team within Torfaen that tackle fly tipping, so I think it would be unlikely that we'd see an increase in fly tipping. Obviously, if you increase the enforcement powers and the number of people taking enforcement action, you would hope to see a decrease in fly tipping as well as incorrect waste presentation. So yeah, it's not something that I'm aware of, having liaised with other local authorities that have enforcement teams, but it's certainly a question that we can ask through the regional group. But as far as I'm aware, this isn't something that's been experienced.
Thank you.
Could I just come back with a supplementary on that, please?
If you would.
Yeah, side waste, which is, in all effects and purposes, if it's not collected, it is fly tipping. We do see problems with that in particular streets, which I've passed forward to your department. And it just gets moved slightly further away. And what we'll see is what was happening on one street will then move over onto the next street or end up by the side of a litter bin. So there is an issue already with residual waste and what would be side waste actually sort of spreading out into the community. So it would be good if you can try and get some information from Street Scene, which is where we refer it to when we want this collected, and some communication again between the enforcement engagement and education team and what we are reporting in as councillors, and residents are reporting in as well as regards black bags and side waste and fly tipping of what looks more like domestic black bags around the wards.
Thanks. I think
Anybody
that's
else
a really
want?
good point about engaging with Street Scene, because definitely, yeah, that they'll be aware of the hotspots for that. And like you say, if we're tackling incorrect side waste, actually that should reduce the amount of fly tipping that happens in terms of domestic waste.
Sorry, I think Councillor Clarkson makes a really good comment. I actually went into the community on Monday night and I saw quite a few black bags floating in the town by bins, and the amount of black bags and household waste that are pushed into community bins, I am sure is an issue. So that's following on from the side waste and the top hatting that we're currently having. But I do see the communal bins within my community, and I'm sure other members do. They do see that the bins are not being used in the appropriate manner, i.e. for waste, litter, but not for refuge. Thank you.
Has everybody finished on supplements for that question? Great. So last question now is 23, and that's Councillor Carl Gordon. You're last now.
Thank you, Chair. I'm sure we'll all be pleased to know it's the last question in this scrutiny meeting. An observation and a plea, if you like, within this question. A lot of the messaging our community is hearing, and I'm hearing, is that we're doing this to reach a target, to reduce the rate or increase the rate to 70%, so that we don't get fined for not carrying out recycling priorities correctly. That's an element of it, but there's a reason that those targets are in place, and I think we need to reflect in our messaging to our communities that, the council has declared a climate emergency as well. So by doing this, by doing our bit, however small, on a sort of personal, house by house basis, this contributes to our contribution to sort of the climate emergency as well. So it's not about hitting the Welsh Government target. The targets are in place not to be punitive to local authorities. They're there to help change society for the better. As a father and grandfather, I want to, bequeath a decent planet, a livable planet for the next generations. And by doing this, we help in just a small way doing that. So can we focus on that as well, or instead of the current messaging about the council's got to hit a target, because that takes it out of people's hands. It's about the council hitting some target. It's not. It's about changing the climate as well. And yes, we'd like to hit that target because it means we're contributing to those efforts. So we want to bring residents on board that there's more carrot than stick in the messaging, if that makes any sense. Thank you. Bit of a ramble, but I'm sure you get the point.
Who wants to answer that one?
I'm happy to come back on that. I think it's very important that the purpose of Welsh Government policies never really strays too far from our messaging. There are very practical, pragmatic reasons why the risk of being fined is one that would concern local residents, and I'm comfortable with people knowing that. But the primary objective behind any of these measures is to protect the planet and to tackle the climate emergency. So I take that point wholly.
Anybody else?
Yes, could I come in with just a supplementary on that, to add to that comment?
Go on, Linda. I was waiting for that.
I think we need to inform people of the issue of landfill, why we are trying to reduce landfill. It's not, that might be a more direct message than saving the planet, reducing climate change. But, how expensive landfill is, how toxic landfill is, how polluting landfill is, and, the positives of what we get from recycling. And so that would be maybe a more direct message to use than the bigger message of climate change that might hit more of a note with people.
I will put one in now as well, because I'm the one that brings up the word social contract, which goes back to the old wartime idea that you collect the railings and all the rest of it and make Spitfires. We've just had the D-Day celebration. But the idea of recycling was that it's obscene to chuck things away and put them in landfill, like you said, Linda. But you everything can be the reuse, repurpose, and recycle. The 3 R's, that concept, which was 30 years ago or so, and which was put about by friends of the earth, that everything has a purpose, and stopping that going to landfill was the important reason for doing that. And in a lot of people's minds, that's why they do it. The social contract was you put that stuff in the boxes, the bags, and whatever else we give them. There's a purpose to it, and then we collect it timely. It was better than put it in the bins. And that really is what we're doing as a council. I certainly been involved in that personally, and I think a lot of members are quite passionate about this as well. And I think a lot of our community are. So we provide a service, and the expectation from us and Welsh Government, because there was a lot of Welsh Government ministers that used to recycle in the old days when they weren't Welsh Government ministers and members. So it's important, the social contract that we have with our residents, that we provide a service and that people will take it up. It's like the bins now. People expect people to put things in bins and take it away. It's a service. It's a bit more than a service, an obligation. So I think that's important now. That's become a standard idea. You can't just chuck it in a bin and away it goes. It doesn't work like that. Landfill is incredibly wasteful thing of resources, and it can't happen. And as others said, climate change now won't allow it because it gives off gases and it's just ruination of the planet. That's my little bit in there as well. Anybody else want to say anything?
Could I just come in there, please?
Yes,
yeah.
Please.
Just to say that obviously the residual waste doesn't go to landfill anymore. It now goes to energy from waste. So the message is the same. You know, we do want to avoid it going to energy from waste. It's much better, like you say, recycling is a resource, and it's much better to reuse it. So I agree. I think positive messaging would be really helpful. We did have a workshop recently with some of the SPB councillors, and this came up during that, and we were saying about having messaging around every little helps, and that thing, you know, that you've all mentioned in terms of climate change and trying to make a difference. But in terms of the amount of waste that is being produced, it is important that we do reduce that as well, because there's legislation coming in that will mean there'll be an additional tax. The emissions trading scheme is going to mean, we don't know the exact amount yet, but it's going to be around the region of £50 per tonne for every tonne of waste that's sent to energy from waste. We'll be paying a tax on that. So yeah, again, it's a fiscal reason, but it's a very real reason why we need to reduce the amount of waste, the amount of general waste, and increase the amount of recycling.
Right. Well, thank you very much, you guys, for being on this talk. Do you want to add anything before we ask you to go when we do our deliberations on this?
No, thank you, Chair. Thank you very much for having us. Well,
thank you, Sue, for sitting through. You interjected and useful. Claire, do you want to say anything before we go?
Nothing more from me.
Mark?
No, Chair, just to thank Scrutiny for their time and questions. Much appreciated. We've taken a lot from it today. We've been really useful.
Thank you very much indeed. Well, that's the end of the questioning part of the scrutiny, and obviously you can go now and enjoy the rest of the day, and we'll get on with our deliberations. Garrett will tell me when people have removed themselves. Has everybody gone, Garrett? And we're still on camera, by the way, so don't act like it's in school.
Yeah, still on camera, Chair, and yes, the exec member and Claire have left, and Mark's left the virtual side of the meeting, so you're good to go on the recommendations.
Right, I've got cramp at the moment, so I don't want to take too long for this. Sitting in one position with a leg to help. So, right, how could we get Garrett to read back the salient points, and then please add in your bits as he goes? Well, read them through, and then we can go back to them. I'm sure we got a lot out of this, so there's quite a lot of points here, I suspect.
Yeah, Chair, I think it's probably better to go the other way round. Members can obviously propose any recommendations, and then if there's any gaps that I've got at the end, obviously I can try and fill anything in.
You're more comfortable with that. Okay, please, members, go one at a time then. I'll do it that way. My mic's going to stay on this, so please put up with it. If it gets a bit too squeaky, I'll turn it off. Right, Councillor Parish, Norma?
Right, thanks, Chairman. I think we need to explain why we don't like the literature, or, you know, the literature the way we would like to see it deposited to the people who are going to read it, hopefully. Can we put that down?
Did you pick that one up strongly, Garrett?
So does that mean we want to review it before they finalise it? That we look at this as a draft, and it could be circulated via email for comment?
Members that's a good view, actually. Members in agreement with that because we've got Norma and Linda on that one. I imagine everybody else is by the sound of it.
Yeah.
Can I just
Yeah.
check?
But I don't think they'll be going out quickly. What I gather, it will be some time. But I hope they are listening to us.
Can I just check when you say about reviewing the letters within the appendix? Yeah? Right.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
You made a very strong point, didn't you, about simplified literature notifying people? I thought that was rather good, Norma.
Yes. Yes.
Put that one in.
Yeah. They need to go back to the beginning for some people, if you know what I mean, to help them to know how to recycle, the people that don't recycle.
I saw your reaction to 2 clicks on the internet as well.
Yes. Yeah.
Chair. I think if I may, Chair, that there's recommendation is that we need to reinforce some previous messaging, as Councillor Parish has highlighted, because it clearly hasn't landed, so we need to make sure that that's reinforced. We need to make sure that the tone of messaging is very much about cooperative and collaborative rather than directive and punitive. And we have a strong message that the letters that are used take a much more sympathetic, engaging and clear message in terms of that communication with the residents prior to the rather more formal messages that have to be given in relation to enforcement notice if and when we get to that point.
Does everybody agree with David on that one?
Yeah, I think the letters and what I was saying about re-educating people, think they can be separated, you know what I mean? 2 different
Does everybody agree with Norma
recommendations?
Yes. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah,
Anybody else?
Yeah, they can be. Sorry, they can be 2 separate.
Just one at a time, a minute.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would say splitting it out. Sorry, I've just tried to summarise things collectively, but it was an attempt to try and wrap things together. Yeah. But yes, there was definite elements that made several different recommendations.
Yeah, I wasn't criticising you. Okay.
No, brilliant. Thank you. Another recommendation, because you
just to follow on from that, I think the whole messaging that currently is happening with comms messaging going out has resulted in a lot of bad negativity about what we're trying to move forward. So therefore, I feel that there needs to be a softer approach, like they say, but it needs to be done from now, not from the future.
Thanks, Nick. And anybody else?
Yes, please, if I could, Chair.
Please.
I think this is something that we need to revisit should it go ahead and be accepted at Cabinet, and would go to the big recommendation that we review it 12 months after it begins, and maybe invite Bronavon to that meeting so that we can have the conversation about how they're encouraging recycling in their properties and with the residents.
Yeah, because that wasn't really answered.
And maybe get some information about, well, we should know by then if any fixed penalty notices have been actually issued and how the education campaign has been going.
So you want to know what the data is in a year's time?
Just review the whole of this policy, the education engagement.
Just to sort of obviously bring into the mix, in 12 months, well, obviously should be going to Cabinet in October, shouldn't it? And obviously starting March. You will have the opportunity to pick this sort of item amongst your visioning. So like next summer's visioning, obviously it would be your decision, and you could raise it there. It could be a member suggestion.
Can you hold that for us to make sure that is in the basket when we come to our visiting? So I think it's important we review it at that point.
No problem.
Does pushing it on, does anybody got a concept about the whole regime about whether we make the targeting? Because I've not heard anybody bring that up. That is obviously part of this whole thing. the main reason they're doing this is to make sure we don't get fined if we don't get 70%. I mean, how do we go forward on this?
I think there's a point that we've picked up, and I think colleagues here have highlighted, is that there's a value in making sure that proposed messaging is run past members to give a perspective on how it's going to land, because as the point at 4.4 is, it's clear that members of the public aren't necessarily always aware, and we are fielding, as colleagues have recognised, a number of queries and comments from members, and that's also evident in the members' comments that the public comments that we received. Yeah. So I think that's the offer, but also the request that final messaging should actually have a chance to be scrutinised by members, because we know what happened with the original point that went out about 3 weekly or 4 weekly collections. That was not well received, and I think could largely have been avoided if we'd had better member engagement beforehand. Thinking carefully how to
Thank you, David. That's a very useful suggestion.
Would you suggest member seminar, maybe?
Yeah, I think we should be recommending a members' seminar to actually keep all members informed, because this is not just for the recycling group, it's not just for scrutiny members. I think all members have a strong interest in this, and we need to make sure that they have that opportunity to be brought up to date.
I think it's fair to say that the remarks over the 3 weekly waste collections hasn't been taken on board, the amount of opposition we had to that. And now if you look at the situation with the red bags coming in, there's no different in the tone of what was said then, and there's no different in the tone now. And people don't like change. And they don't like change because it's being pushed onto them in the way that they are. So a more sympathetic message, I think, is really, really very important.
Yeah, can I just, following on from that, I completely agree with what Nick has just said. And I think the attitude has to be that this is our idea and we'd like to take you with us on this journey. I think that people felt told to. They felt this is going to happen, and they feel like it's happening to them rather than they're coming on the journey with us. No, I completely agree.
How do you frame that, Jane, as a recommendation?
I add that on to what Nick said and pass it to Geraint in the hope that he can form it into some sensible sentences.
Well, they got out of that well.
That's all right. I'll feed it into the same recommendation around, obviously, the improved engagement with members and having a seminar on it, because obviously they're the sort of comments that will be made by members in that arena that can then be taken on board.
But I do ask the question, and perhaps Dave Williams might come up with this. How do we, the whole point of this exercise in one thing is to make sure we get up to 70%. We don't want the fines. Is there anything there, David, that we can look at, or is it all coming back to positive engagement?
I think, from my point of view, my question that we asked about plastic film and the question that...
Can I just finish this point, if I may, about the fines?
Oh, sorry. Question.
That's the bit I was concerned about, because we're not answering the whole point about bringing this regime in. We bring the plastic up because it's a really important point you make about getting more stuff in there. But there's £10,000 per percentage if we don't. I'm just trying to get this point in. What can we do about that, if anything?
I think, Chair, there was a valid point was made by members to actually make sure that clear and up-to-date information about what can be recycled in what bin needs to be mentioned. We made the point it was not sufficient that was purely on a website for people to access. So, as a very small example, the appendix about current collecting system, I didn't ask the question because it seemed a bit trivial, doesn't mention Tetra Paks. So you need to make sure that information is available. And I think perhaps our recommendation is consideration that clear information is available in the hard copy form for local residents who wish to be able to get that information, so that they could, the suggestion about the fridge magnet type thing was, I think, a perfectly valid one. Not everybody's going to want to take that up, but it could be, if we don't provide the opportunity for that, we risk alienating a proportion of our residents.
I think there's another point on this. We're actually saying that we want the residents to do what we want them to do. Well, we're not actually telling them what we've achieved and how we've achieved it, and we're not actually thanking those residents for the increase of the 5% that we've had this year. There's no thanks back into the communities. There's no, hey guys, we're doing really good here right now. We've achieved this target that we've wanted now. However, we've got another target to reach and we need your support. But they're not actually going back into communities and saying that hey, thank you. They're not even saying a thank you for what's been done, or they're not saying a thank you for what we've achieved. There's no kind of, it's all one way. It's never, hey guys, you've done well. It's a slap on the back. Come on, but we can do better.
Right. Yeah. Anybody else want to come in on?
Yeah,
Carl, do you want to say something?
I think that feeds into the comms issue that we've raised.
Yeah.
Is that the campaign needs to be stronger.
Yeah.
And it is almost back to basics, as has been brought up in another point raised. But yeah, we definitely need to be continuing the public engagement through getting out, going out to the schools, supermarket drop-ins, that type of thing. Maybe having one of, some of the team in the sort of foyer, but we definitely need a stronger comms message going out as to what we're trying to achieve, how we're trying to achieve it, that we're not going to be just jumping into fixed penalty notices, that there is going to be, and I'm quite satisfied that there is enough process before fixed penalty notice to give everybody as much opportunity as possible to come along with the behaviour changes or be helped to modify the way that they're dealing with their refuse or have extra support and extra capacity.
Right.
We need to get that message out. It's not known.
Can you hold that point? Because there were a couple of good points in there. One was that people that needed support, even in there, got it, and they did say about mental and physical. We did ask that question specifically. Can we make that recommendation? I know where Mark walked away with it, but that needs to be a recommendation, doesn't it? What is it? Vulnerable people.
You leave that one with me, Chair. That's fine. I'll mark that down.
Yeah, and Nathan's clear, descriptive, supportive language bit. Have we got that one in there?
Yeah.
He did ask a good question and got a positive response. That's another recommendation. I think that's where we're driving at. I think everybody agreed that. Nick, do you want to come back on plastic?
Yeah,
because that drives people mad.
I think today's conversation today was really that they were expecting outside parties to be able to recycle plastic. I think plastic is a big issue in many ways. It's going to fill the bins up. It's like polystyrene. And right now, I think we need a better policy regarding the way that we are going to move forwards as a council. Whilst I recognise that the fact that stretchy plastic is not a valuable product, but it's still a product within what we have that goes into these bins to increase the bin capacity. So I think as a council, we need to look more directly at stretchy plastic, despite the fact that if you buy a fridge or something like that, that the opportunity of that being taken away is positive, but not everybody takes that positive, which leads on to another question, and that's...
Can I come in?
Yeah, in a minute. Yeah, have you finished?
No, I've just got another observation that I think is quite important, and that's the fact that there are people within our communities that don't have transport to be able to get rid of their bigger waste, which is going to go into their bins. And we need to be more transparent, and we need to help those residents that don't have vehicles to be able to get down to the tip, to be able to get rid of the waste, which is going to go in the bins in the long term. We need to help those people that don't have transport.
Right.
Yeah, that's a very good point.
So do we need to recommend a campaign to keep it out the bin, basically, or some fancier name than that? But it's basically a campaign to stop people dumping things in bins. Essentially, that's what you're talking about.
Yeah, if I can come in on that, please, Chair.
Yeah, let Norma finish, because she's got a hand up here at the moment. Then Lindy, come in.
Well, I was going to say something else. You know, the terraced houses.
Yeah.
We need to explain that lots of people can't have all these boxes and what have you. They, you know, because they haven't got back gardens, they haven't got front gardens. They're right, you know, on the pavements, and that it should be looked in. And these people will have to have a different, how can I say, different aspect of all this than the rest of us who have gardens where, you know, and garages and what have you. If they're in these terraced houses, what can they do to help them?
So there's a question there about research and solutions for terraced houses, basically.
Chair, if I can come in, I could wrap up the last few points into one sort of recommendation around exploring as much support for, you know, obviously you've highlighted different situations, but it's support seems to be the thing that links them together. That's either people, you know, their home lives or their vehicles or whatever, you know. So, you know, if you're happy, I can wrap something around in that sense.
Please do. People okay with that?
No, I think terraced houses is different to what Nick was saying. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. I think they could be made into separate ones.
Okay, I'll separate them.
Can I just come back in with my suggestion about
Linda, please do.
Working more closely with Street Scene to monitor the impacts on the policy with the increase in work, collecting what could be side waste and what would have once been top hat waste that's left around litter bins, the misuse of litter bins and increase of what appears to be more general household waste, fly tipping. We need those figures linked into the information we get back from the changes this policy introduces.
That's a pretty fundamental one. Thank you, Linda. We can have that as a recommendation. Anybody else? Carl, you haven't said anything. I'm just worried. You got anything at all you want to say?
I think to avoid repetition, I agree with the other members' comments.
That's a good way out of that one. Anybody else got anything else they're burning on now, or can I get Geraint to come back with the ones he's picked up?
I'm really trying to sort of suggest that probably, you know, we recognise that we're pleased to note that the waste and recycling teams will work closely with education and enforcement teams, but in addition, they should be working with Street Scene so that we identify where problem areas are and there's a joined-up approach to the addressing recycling and littering issues.
Right. Can I just quickly remind you, have we answered the key messages in the enforcement policy, which is the towards zero waste strategy, local authorities best recyclers have, but we've got to get that percentage, and we're bringing in the behaviour change. I'm just reminded because I remember that one time we didn't go back to this, we got ourselves in a bit of trouble. It wasn't anybody that's on this committee at the moment other than me and Linda, I think. So that's why I was asking, do you think that the target acquisition was something we've answered with these recommendations, and report focus on enhanced policy of part of work stream 5. So have we got some answers to that particular one, which I think is the main one, and raising the rate. And if we've got stuff that's innovative coming from this committee, so much the better. Have we answered those questions?
Well, I think so, because
go on.
Somebody else talking then.
Can Norma just answer what she said?
I thought someone else was talking too, or is it Echo?
It's Echo.
I mean, yes, if the people, our residents, have the help that we've explained now, yes, they will be having more recycling done.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? That's the way I look at it.
Chair, if it's okay, just to bring you back obviously to the recommendations, you have considered the draft enforcement policy within the wider programme of the Razor 8, and you have provided plenty of recommendations to the exec member. So in that sense, you have completed your task for today.
I will also draw our attention to the fact that we've now got an exec member for this one area, so in fact that's quite useful. Right, could you give us an idea of what we've got in the bag, please?
Can I just suggest one more possible recommendation?
Go on, James.
Do we want one around the A to Z list of recyclable things on the website? Partly about keeping that up to date, so I think it's vital it's up to date, and partly about communicating that it's there to people, because I'm not sure that people know that it's there to use it.
I think that's a very, very good suggestion, to be honest. I think we can support that, Jane.
It would have been better if we'd had this earlier.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
So
much earlier.
Right. So
it would come back to us then before going out to the public. Yeah. But they seem to have, how can I say, expected this to happen, in a few months. Well, if it had come to us first of all, for us to explain what our residents would like,
Right.
Not what they'd like, but the help that they need for us to have more recycling, it would have been helpful, but we can't do that now because of the time.
Just to remind members, this would have come quite a bit sooner. However, obviously the general election was called and we weren't able to hold the meeting, so we have had a significant delay due to that. So. Just to provide a bit of context.
There is an explanation, and that was it. Can you just give us a flavour of what we've got, please?
I just wanted to follow on from Jane's comment. I think that we should be making more visibility to the residents. So the idea of that fridge magnet is important. And my final comment for today is, I think we should...
Thank you, Nick.
No, and my final comment of the day is, I think that we should thank them for this meeting this morning, because they are moving forward, possibly in the right direction.
Thank you. That's positive. Right? Can we just have a list of what we've got?
Yeah. Can I just suggest, just so we don't lose it? I know they said that they would be looking to inform members when the door-stopping campaigns are happening in their area, but I think it should be a recommendation so that it's actually clear as a scrutiny recommendation. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Williams. David, I was suggesting that we did have local contact with members as to what was happening in areas. That's a very good suggestion. Right, Garen, can you get back to telling us what we've got?
Chair, I'm conscious of the time. Obviously, it's been 2.5 hours.
I am as well. This is why I'm trying to move it on.
Are members happy for me to formulate this out of the meeting? And obviously, just because I send them around for approval afterwards, so hopefully send them around tomorrow.
I'm quite happy to do that as chair if members are.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I think it's universal. I can't see what's happening in the chamber, but it's universal on here.
Yeah. Yes, Chair. It's universal here as well.
Yeah. So you got out there on date of next meeting September, isn't it?
Yes, Chair, it's in September. We'll have the update on the recommendations from the previous year and the adopted action plans, and then that'll probably be that'll be the formal part of the meeting, which will be fairly short, and then following that, then we'll have the visioning session, so you can pick your basket for the forthcoming year.
Right. My only comment is thank you very much, members, for a lot of contribution from everybody, and this is a new committee, so I didn't know what to expect, to be quite honest. You've all contributed well, and it's a bit disjointed, so it's just bedding in to find out what we're all about. I think next meeting, at least we've got an idea of what everybody does and how they work. Thank you for being patient with me on this. I'm not the best of places to do it off of here, but at least I think we've got an idea of how we all work. And thank you very much for your contributions.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. I'm quite
Chair.
enjoying